So thank you for choosing to be with us today. We know you have lots of choices in this virtual world that we are in, and probably going to be in for a bit longer yet. And we're delighted you chose to participate with us today. Today, I'll be speaking about the creative genius that lives in each one of us and wants to express through us. Whether that's a scary thought or a delightful one depends entirely on your point of view of yourself and how much you think you matter in the world. This is one of my favorite topics because each one of us has a creative genius embedded within ourselves, if not multiple ones, whether we recognize them or not. And if you think I'm only talking about making art or music or writing, I'm not. I'm asking you to open up your imagination, your tool chest of possibility, and think about all the ways you positively and creatively interact with yourself and with others in your world. Do you feel like you have a gift for making people feel at home? Do you have the gift for making your home a haven for you or your family or your friends? Do you have the gift of compassion for human or animals, or both? Do you love taking care of animals or plants? Can you decorate a space or a table and make it beautiful or welcoming, or both? Do you know how to throw a party and make everyone you invite feel welcome and included? Are you a creative cook or a gardener? Do you read to children and find just exactly the right book for each one that encourages them or stimulates their imagination? Do you love talking with children about hard things like grief and helping them see that their world hasn't ended, it's just different? Do you love painting walls or trim or iron fences? Do you love fixing things that are broken or repurposing things that would be headed to the dump? Do you love helping people privately and go to great lengths to keep your assistance hidden? Each of these is an expression of creative genius at work. And I haven't even gotten to things that the general public recognizes as creative. So from last week's spiritual thought, when Robin was with us, from Dr. Ernest Holmes, from the book Art of Life, page 38, paragraph 3, the moment one realizes he can use the creative power of his thought to free himself from bondage, that moment he starts on a new adventure. He gives birth to a new possibility. In time, he discovers that he has built his prison walls himself, that the cell in which he has been incarcerated was self-created. By identifying himself with the spiritual universe, these walls crumble, and he sees himself as a free soul. The reading that Shelley did this morning during morning meditation today was from this thing called You, and she caught the same idea because there's only one mind, right? So if I've activated your yeah buts in describing creativity as something that each one of us has, I'll share a few of my own moldy oldies, beliefs that I used to have where I didn't see myself as creative. Yeah, but you don't know about the time where I had to give a book report in 4th grade, and I was nervous, and I dropped all my index cards on the floor. And since I'd forgotten to number them, I didn't recover from that fiasco, and I stammered for a while and eventually left the front of the classroom in tears. Yeah, but some of you were here for this one. When I tried out for the TED Talks in Tucson a couple years ago, I flummoxed my way through my memorized talk about making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And well, it was abysmal. I was so grateful they didn't pick me because I would have had to try to turn myself into a TED Talk speaker. which I wasn't at the time. The takeaway, just because it didn't work out the way you wanted a time or two or 12, doesn't mean it's not to be. It just means you haven't figured out your unique way of sharing your gift or your gifts yet. So what gets in the way of us expressing our creative genius? You know, those tired old companions of our lives: worry, doubt, shame, blame, fear, criticism, lack of trust in self, believing that our ideas are not good enough to be expressed, explored, or shared. The idea that nobody wants to hear what we think or see what we made. Not wanting to disappoint ourselves or others. Not wanting to be disapproved of by others or by the story that we tell in our heads. Not wanting to stand out because we've been told that we're not that special anyway, and how dare we be so presumptuous to think that we are? Where did that critical voice come from? And why on earth do we believe it so readily? The short answer to my own question is primarily that critical voice is some parent person, some authority person from our history. And it shows up in the guise of creating safety, creating a feeling of belonging to the tribe, and our old friend, cultural conditioning. Maybe we come from a very long line of people who did their very best never to stand out. And that's what we learned from an early age was safe. If that's the way you want to live, knock yourself out. Seldom do people walk into a religious science center more than once if that old way of living works for them. Because that's not what we encourage here. We encourage expression. We encourage uniqueness. We encourage people to be who they are, not who society says they should be. A couple years ago, I discovered Richard Bach, the dude who wrote Illusions and Jonathan Livingston Seagull and lots of other things, studied Christian Science when he was young. And in Illusions, he wrote, "We are game-playing, fun-having creatures. We are the otters of the universe." That book was actually my introduction to New Thought teachings, way back when, though I didn't recognize it as that at the time. And if you think about any of the books Richard Bach wrote, including the most recent one about his plane crash that should have killed him and didn't, he's speaking our language. The power to create different possibilities, the power to live in our expansive selves, and not from our small, shrinking, diminished self. It's pretty cool to actually put those pieces together. And Gay Hendricks, from his book, The Big Leap, which we used in a book study 3 years ago, in March of 2018, he spends a great deal of time psyching us up to consider living in our creative genius, rather than settling for something we might do well or well enough, or something that's expected of us. He reminded us about our upper limit problem, which in his language is the clever and creative ways we get in our own way, or encourage other people to help us stay small and inconsequential. Hendricks also asks 3 questions that are worth considering. Am I willing to increase the amount of time every single day that I feel good inside? Am I willing to increase the amount of time my whole life goes well? And then the combination, am I willing to feel good and have my life go well all the time? They seem like no-brainers, right? Who wouldn't want to have those experiences? Culturally, that collective thinking says we're not allowed to have that much good. We're not allowed to feel good about ourselves because heaven knows we've made mistakes and therefore we're, blah, 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 nonsense. Gay Hendricks goes on to ask the really wicked questions. Can I stop messing things up in my life when things start going well? And the crux of it, can I eliminate my own behaviors, my own belief systems that stop or inhibit or prevent the flow of creative energy? Can I learn that it's okay to feel good and have the life I choose? Which is another way to say, can I live from my own internal compass? Can I live from my creative genius? In Living the Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes wrote on page 121, we need to repudiate the belief that we are bound. We need to know that the spirit within us is now free, complete, and perfect. There's not a person living who cannot change their thought, at least somewhat. We can all improve and broaden our mental reaction right where we are. And with each new and better mental outlook, there will be a corresponding change in our reaction, our experience of our world. He goes on, daily, we must know that we are no longer subject to the collective belief in lack, limitation, want, or fear, knowing that spirit is within us and for us and operating through us, knowing that all good is ours, and then specifically declaring that the particular good we desire can be made manifest. We are allowed to have it. The only thing in our way is our belief that we can't. And then in The Science of Mind, on page 440, Dr. Holmes wrote, when a human's thought rests entirely on themselves, they become abnormal and unhappy. But when they give themselves to any legitimate purpose, losing themselves in the thing which they are doing, they become normal and happy. Only as much life enters into us as we can conceive. And we conceive of life in the larger sense only when we give ourselves completely to it. We abandon ourselves to it. Let the one who is sad, depressed, or unhappy find some altruistic purpose in which they may pour their own being, and they will find a new inflow of life which they have never dreamed of. I was just thinking about a friend of mine who moved from her house in the country where she had a farm and was taking care of a lot of animals and acreage and stuff. And she realized she wanted to move to town because she was feeling like she didn't want to work that hard. And she called me and she said, how do I move from being a farm person to a city person? And I said, find something you want to do. Find some way you want to engage with people in town, with your neighbors, with some nonprofit that does things you support. And so she did. She joined Meals on Wheels and the food bank and the local garden club. And suddenly she had no more sadness about leaving her farm and moving to town because she had all these friends. She had this altruistic purpose in which to live and expand her life experience. So I want to circle back to a couple affirmations that we use every single Sunday, and one that some members of our Roots class have been exploring for the past couple weeks. There is a connection. The host says it first in the welcome greeting. Beryl said it this morning. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is our life now. And then we repeat it together at the end, making it more personal. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. What's interesting, in the original, in the text where that came from, it reads, there is only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. What would change for each of us if we actually believed that the life of God was our life? Which brings me to the affirmation from Emma Curtis Hopkins from page 96 of Scientific Christian Mental Practice. This is how I amended it to make it work for me. I do believe, affirm, and declare that my God now works with, through, as, and by me to make me aware of my omnipotence, my power, my omnipresence, my experience of the presence, and my omniscience, my access to divine wisdom. I have faith in God. I have the faith of God, which is why it was so fun to hear Shelley pull these same three omnis out of the one mind when she did the prayer, the opening prayer this morning. We each have access to omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience as much as we can grasp in our minds that we can have. Even if we don't know the words, even if we don't actually believe it's possible, we have as much access to power, presence, and wisdom. So from the experience of the folks in class that worked with the affirmation, they felt an increase in power, presence, and wisdom without as much of that nagging doubt of being good enough to have it. We can live the life of God as us if we choose to. One last thought before I close. What do we do with this awareness? We don't have to do anything unless we want a better life, a different life, a different experience. To repeat Gay Hendricks' words, am I willing to feel good and have my life go well all the time? You don't have to. Nobody's going to make you live in your genius and have the life you love. And once you decide to do it, no one can stop you. So I wanted to close with a pretty poem by David Whyte or something by Rumi. When I was thinking about this last night, what came in loud and clear was I need to tell you about the Procrastinator's Guide to Success. 2 years ago, I took a writing class, and the two facilitators promised that if you did what they said at the end of the week, you would have the first draft of a publishable book. I went, I did it. Most of it was okay. But after the class finished, I put the book away. I didn't even open it for 2 years. And then almost 2 weeks ago, a new opportunity surfaced in my world, and I signed up for a 6-month writing class. And the express explicit purpose of this class is at the end of 6 months of writing every single day, you will have something to submit to Kindle. An ebook, public, ready to go or ready to be edited to go. And I thought, well, I could do that. And then I realized, oh, what wants to be done is this book that I've procrastinated on for 2 years. So I opened it for the first time in 2 years. And I discovered some of it wasn't too bad. Some of it's going to take an entire rewrite. And yet here I am sitting on this uncomfortable space of realizing it's time for me to move this procrastinator's guide from something that I did once and I don't ever have to think again to something that wants to be born. And doing the work in community means I actually put myself out there for other people to read and comment on and tell me what they think and tell me what's clear and what's not and what makes sense and what doesn't. There's very little that's more disconcerting than having people critique your work. But if you look at it as for your benefit, if I can look at it as for my benefit, for my growth, for my expansion, then it turns from an ugly thing to a pleasant thing. So that's where I'm at. Week 2. Grab hold of your genius, whatever it is, whatever truly lights you up. Explore it, experience it, express it. Eliminate every single thing that's in the way, which is mostly stuff that lives between your own 2 ears. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to roll straight into the prayer and grab whatever thought you have about exploring and expressing your own creative genius while I speak the words. I rest in that sweet spot. I know the one mind lives as me, shows up as me, experiences and explores the world as me. And I know that same truth for and about every single beloved. Each one gets to have the experience, gets to have the awareness of God as them, to the best of their belief, to the best of their understanding, to the best of their experience. And the divine mind only wants a greater expansion, a greater expression, a greater exploration for each one. And so I feel delighted at this sometimes unnerving thought of stepping into a greater yes. And yet at the same time, I know that is what I am called to be, and each one is too. I know that each has the opportunity of saying no, and I know that each has the opportunity of saying yes. So I reinforce and encourage that yes in the same way that divine mind does. Bringing greater good into the world only increases the amount of good available for each and all. And so I feel a smile crack open on my face, and I feel the skin around my eyes crinkle as I smile and I laugh and I think about how much more wonderful the world becomes when people live in their genius and explore and express their great good. I celebrate this opportunity to practice. I celebrate this opportunity to explore and express this great good that wants to be revealed and released by each one. I bless all who choose to play and all who don't. And I know that the divine is always and ever for us. And we get to decide what that looks like. And no penalty, no hardship, no harm, no foul, only goodness. So I relax into this great good. I watch it blossom and bloom as each one steps into expressing more of their lives and sharing that with others. And I celebrate this opportunity to engage in this fabulous thing called life. Knowing the words are true, I let them be, and so it is.